Morning. All right, good morning. We will just kick things off right away. As I mentioned, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Maddie Duppler. I'm the Senior Fellow for Fiscal Policy at the National Taxpayers Union. We obviously have a very strong lineup of leaders here today who are very involved in the effort to get comprehensive tax reform passed. I won't be very long. I want to kick things off right away with someone who knows quite a bit about free enterprise and the importance of getting our economy moving again. Senator Perdue is the only Fortune 500 CEO serving in Congress and brings 4 decades of business experience to the United States Senate, which is obviously very important expertise as we continue to talk through ways comprehensive tax reform can get our economy moving again. And with that, I will just kick things over to Senator Perdue.
Thank you, Maddie. Make me sound very old. But we're here on a historic day today. We have an opportunity to deliver results and change this tax code for the first time since 1986. We wouldn't be here today without a few groups that have really made this happen. First of all, I want to introduce some of our speakers today, but Pete Sepp with the National Taxpayers Union is here. Grover Norquist with Americans for Tax Reform. Tim Phillips with Americans for Prosperity. And Dan Holler from the Heritage Foundation, Heritage Action. Thank you guys for being here. We would not be here without the huge role that you guys have played. We know that Washington needs a sense of urgency. President Trump has called us to action. He is moving at a business pace, not a bureaucratic pace. He wants us to pass the Senate and the House bill by Thanksgiving, have it on his desk by Christmas. This is totally possible in our opinion. The House has made a great effort to start this process. It's a great starting point, providing relief for American workers, growing our economy, and making us more competitive with the rest of the world. There are 3 facets to this bill, or these bills. One is that we have to eliminate our archaic repatriation tax. It's estimated by outside groups this could mean $4,000 to $9,000 of additional income for the average worker in America. This is huge. The second facet is to reduce our corporate tax rate from 35 to 20, and I think you'll see that in both these bills. The President set that out earlier as a target of 15. We now are settling in on 20. And that will make us competitive with the rest of the world. And lastly, we want to give, the third facet, we want to give American workers a break in this tax code. Again, we would not be here today without many of the folks up here. And I look forward to their conversation today. And now it's my privilege to welcome a new grandfather, Senator Thom Tillis. Thom?
I know Sawyer Marie's not watching yet, but hopefully she can watch it soon. Senator Perdue, thank you. Thanks everyone for being here today. I want to be brief. We have a number of people talking, but first I want to thank the House for their courageous work and moving forward on a bill that I think that we can build on. It's a bill that will promote growth. It's a bill that will help Americans be more economically secure. And it's a bill that we absolutely have to join together, build on, and send to the President's desk. I'm a little bit disappointed with the news reports many of you have seen. Nancy Pelosi's gotten back to her old habits of deciding to vote on something before she's read it. She's already trying to muster opposition to something she hasn't even seen. And I think that's a failure of leadership, and it's the exact opposite of what we intend to do with this bill. We're going to pass a tax reform bill and send it to the President that will grow the economy, that will help us get to a point to where Americans feel like they have a little bit more money to spend after they pay their bills. And we've got to do it. Last thing I'll leave you with, we've done it in North Carolina. I know it works. And what we have to do here is have the discipline to stay focused on fulfilling the promise that we made to the American people. Do not bow to special interest and other people that would either like to kill the bill or keep the bill with only their special interest embraced in it. This is about the American people, and it's about fulfilling the promise that we made to them. I look forward to working with my colleagues in the Senate, with the administration and the House to get this to the President's desk soon. Thank you.
We're blessed to have today Secretary of Treasury Steve Mnuchin is here, and also Kelly Conway is with us today as well. Secretary?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for including me on this. Nothing is more important to the President's economic agenda than tax reform and tax cuts. And I appreciate the opportunity to have worked with members of the Senate and the House since the beginning of the year on this. We couldn't be more excited about where we are. This is about making America competitive again. We have one of the highest tax rates in the world. We tax on worldwide income. This is about making our American companies competitive and bringing jobs back to the United States. It's also about putting more money in the pockets of average Americans with a middle income tax cut. So I've just returned from the Reagan Library where I had the opportunity to speak on Sunday night. There's no better place to remind us of what we need to do here. It's been 31 years, and I look forward to working together with everybody in this room and others on getting this to President Trump to sign in December. Thank you.
Kellyanne?
Thank you very much, Senator. Mr. Secretary, this bill would help moms and dads and moms and pops as well. We are trying to help the job seekers to make it a more competitive environment, to find a secure and well-paying job in your field of choice. We're helping the job creators by reducing their burdens so that they can reinvest those monies into their companies, pay higher wages, keep jobs secure, create new jobs, and invest in inventory and plan for the future to be able to remain successful but also prosperous in this country. And then we're also trying to help the job holders, which represent the vast majority of American households. You know, when my grandfather had a job, when your grandfather had a job, the job was enough to support the whole family. Now we have households that have 2 and 3 jobs. Some are not worried about losing a job or replacing a lost job, but they have no idea why the job is no longer enough. Why are they white-knuckled at the end of each month to pay the rent or the mortgage, the tuition, or the student loan voucher payment? And we want to give them the much-needed relief that they deserve. This says tax cuts for American families, and that's right, but there are also a number of Americans who choose not to be married, choose not to have children, and they too will find relief. We're trying to respond to the changing demography of this country as well. In terms of repatriation, it's incredibly important that Americans understand that we have trillions of dollars of wealth and many jobs parked illegally overseas. And it's time to bring that home, make it more fair, make it more competitive. The current tax code already benefits the wealthy and the well-connected. They hire accountants and attorneys. Some of them even hire lobbyists to help them change the code or navigate the code to their advantage. This is meant to make it simpler and buy back that money and that time that we spend each year just complying with the code. And finally, we want to invigorate and inspire all those would-be job holders and would-be entrepreneurs in this country to feel like in a more competitive environment where economic growth and a robust market economy allows them to realize their version of the American dream. So to the taxpayers, the property owners, the business owners, the homeowners, this is for you. Thank you.
Pete Sell.
How would all of us like billions of hours of our time back? Billions of dollars more in our pockets? Billions in tax savings? A more competitive, growing economy? That's what tax reform is all about. It's delivering on promises that have long been made but not always followed through on. It would be very tempting for us here in Washington to say, we can afford to wait another year on comprehensive tax reform, perhaps just shave a bit off the tax rates, go home and declare a victory. The problem is, by standing still or even making an incremental change, we are falling behind with the rest of the world. Other countries, from the UK to France, are reducing their tax rates. Regulations already embedded in the law are going to impose more paperwork burdens on Americans. It's time to reverse this course, deliver on tax savings, an average of $1,300 for a median income family, put more money in those families' pockets due to economic growth, an average of $2,500. These are real savings and real boosts to the average family's economic circumstances. We cannot afford to wait to take the action on tax reform that will deliver those benefits. Thank you.
I noticed that one of our sponsors today sneaked in. I missed him. I don't know how I do that, but Senator Cruz is here.
Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Tax reform is absolutely critical. A major tax cut is absolutely critical, and I believe we will get it done. We will see the House come together, the Senate come together to deliver results on this. Tax reform should follow 3 critical goals. Number 1, front and center, jobs and economic growth. This should be all about jobs, jobs, jobs. More jobs, higher wage-paying jobs, more opportunity for Americans working to achieve the American dream. Number two is simplicity. The more simplicity, the better. There is power in bold simplicity. And number three is fairness. We should be treating the American people fairly, not picking winners and losers in Washington. And I want to commend the House of Representatives for rolling out the initial draft of their plan last week. I think it was a good step. It was a positive step. There are many good elements of that plan. Cutting the corporate rate to 20% is a good element. Allowing expensing of capital expenditures is a good element. Allowing and encouraging American companies to bring capital back to America to invest and create new jobs, that's a good element. All of those, I hope, will be part of what is ultimately passed. I will say that one of the tasks going forward is that in the House and the Senate, I think we need to do even more to provide a tax cut, not just tax reforms, but a tax cut to every American, to working men and women. I think there is a path forward that actually the President laid out last week, which is repealing the individual mandate, the IRS tax, from Obamacare. The IRS tax, the individual mandate from Obamacare, is profoundly unfair. Each year, the IRS fines about 6 million people because they don't have enough money to afford health care. Roughly 80% of the people getting fined by the IRS make $50,000 a year or less. Roughly 40% make $25,000 a year or less. In my home state of Texas, you've got about 1 million people a year getting fined by the IRS. So here's their situation. You got a single mom who's working, trying to make ends meet. She doesn't have enough money to purchase health insurance because Obamacare has driven health insurance through the roof. And on top of that, the IRS fines her because she doesn't have enough money to purchase health insurance. That is profoundly unfair. We need to repeal that. It's good policy, but here's the particular silver lining for tax reform. The Congressional Budget Office scores that repeal as saving over $400 billion, all of which I believe should be put directly into lowering tax rates on individuals. This draft does a good job on the corporate and business side. We need to do every bit as good a job on the individual side, lowering rates so that every American, so that if you're a single mom waiting tables, you get a tax cut. If you're a school teacher in upstate New York, you get a tax cut. If you're a farmer in Iowa or Nebraska, you get a tax cut. If you're a refinery worker in southeast Texas, you get a tax cut. Every American, every family, every individual sees a real tax cut to make it easier to provide for your needs. If we do that, it'll produce jobs, it'll produce economic growth, and it'll produce fairness for every American. That's our objective, and I believe we're going to get it done.
We also have Grover Norquist from the Americans for Tax Reform.
Thank you. There's a classic Saturday Night Live routine where Dan Aykroyd and his wife are arguing over whether something is a floor wax or a delightful dessert topping. And those of you of a certain age know it was both. This is a jobs bill and a see? You were watching the show. I love that. This is a jobs bill. It's a tax cut. It's a pro-growth energy for the economy, and it is tax reform. It is both. And it's important that it do both as we move forward. There's an old story about the sculptor who was standing next to his beautiful statue of Zeus, and somebody came up and said, "How did you get the beautiful marble statue of Zeus?" And he said, "Well, I started with a block of marble, and I took away all the parts that didn't look like Zeus." So there's Zeus. How do we get a less stupid tax code? We look at the tax code, and we start taking out stupid. The Chinese, socialist China, is at 25% tax on businesses. We're at 35. Okay, stupid. Let's not be there. We have a higher tax code than our friends in Canada and in Britain. Let's take our rates down. 20 is a good start. It is significantly less destructive than 35. We have a lot of American earnings stuck overseas because our tax code doesn't let it come back to the country without punitive taxes. Stupid. A stupid that most of the rest of the world avoids. Let's end that and allow people to bring money back here to create jobs and opportunities and factories here in the United States. We have higher taxes on self-employed people and subchapter S corporations and many of the smaller businesses that employ over half the country, higher tax rates than we do on C Corps. C corporations, hire the other half of the country. Stupid. Let's take those both down and get them more even so we don't discriminate against partnerships and some subchapter S corporations. This is a tremendous first start. I'll end simply by pointing out it is a first start. There will get to 15. We may not be at 15 just yet, but we'll get to 15 on the corporate rate, and we'll work on getting those higher rates down as well. Thank you.
Dan Holler with Heritage Action.
Good morning. Thanks all for being here. It's really exciting to see the Republican Party and the conservative movement so united on something so foundationally important to the American people. And as you've heard, the House put a really good first step forward, and it's encouraging that all the senators here today want to build and improve on that and make it even better for the American people. There's one thing that I think could stand in the way of that happening, and you see it a lot from congressional Democrats who have a sudden interest in the debt and deficit. This is a new concept for them, but they're going to go take a run at it and see if it can work. I want to encourage everybody to think about and understand what we're actually doing in tax reform. Part of the goal is simplification, absolutely. The other part is making sure the federal government is confiscating less of people's hard-earned money. And if you look at it, the federal government is collecting more revenue as a percentage of the economy than it has historically after World War II. So we are at sort of high levels relative to where we have been. It's good to give that money back to the American people. And the concern about debt and deficit, the way we fix that is to give economic stability and certainty to the American people. Only when Americans know that their jobs are secure, their homes are secure, their children's futures are secure, can we go and begin doing the hard, fundamental work of reforming the entitlement system, mandatory spending, and so on. This is an incredibly important first step to growing the economy, getting things back on track, and giving that certainty so we can continue the hard reforms that we all know and believe. And I'm excited for what's to come and what we're going to see over the next several weeks. Thank you.
Tim Phillips with Americans for Prosperity.
Back in April, the president put forward a blueprint that was truly a great step in the right direction on tax reform, lowering, flattening rates to get this economy going again, and actually began to talk about clearing out a lot of the deductions and set-asides that favor the wealthy and the well-connected. We're thrilled to see the House and the Senate moving in that direction. There are moments in time that are just more important than others, and this is a moment for Republicans in the Senate and the House. I think they'll be judged by tax reform for how big and how bold this plan is. It's off to a great start in lowering and flattening rates, but they also need to make sure, and we're urging them to resist the K Street assault, the lobbyists that are coming already swarming the Hill. You can see it, you can feel it. Folks, go big and go bold. Don't let people's tax rates be determined by how good their lobbyists are, how much money they give to politicians. Make it about having low, flat rates that are fair for everybody. That's what we need to do. The blueprint is a good one that the administration has laid out. The House plan is off to a good start, but let's go big, let's go bold. This is the moment to do it. I can tell you at Americans for Prosperity, we've held over 80 town hall meetings across the country. Right at 20,000 Americans from literally every walk of life have come out to these meetings because they want better jobs, they want lower taxes, they want a better life, they want the American dream back. Now's the moment to give it to them. Thank you.
Senator John Barrasso.
When we talk about the Republican Party and the conservative movement coming together, we most certainly did that when we put together the Republican platform at the 2016 Republican National Convention. The liberal press called it the most conservative platform in a century, and I'm proud to have been the chairman of the committee that put this together. Because page one, restoring the American dream, rebuilding the economy and creating jobs. Page one, fair and simple taxes for growth. It says Republicans consider the establishment of a pro-growth tax code a moral imperative More than any other public policy, we go on to say, the way government raises revenue, how much, at what rates, under what circumstances, from whom, and for whom, has the greatest impact on our economy's performance. Ladies and gentlemen, that's why we're here, that's why we're united, and that's why we're going to pass not just tax reform, tax reduction, tax relief, tax cuts for the American public.
Senator Shelley Moore Capito.
Oh, thank you, Senator Perdue. Thank you all for being here today. As was just mentioned, I do believe this is a moment in time for us. We have the opportunity to make a real difference in so many lives across our country, whether it's the worker, the small business, the company, the confidence that the American people have in us that we can do the things that we said we were going to do and make that difference. Kellyanne mentioned what this tax bill and this tax cut will do for families. Senator Heller and I were at a press conference 2 weeks ago with Ivanka Trump talking about the child tax credit and what an impact that's going to have on families across this country. I mean, that's money in the pocket. Secretary Mnuchin, thank you. And I want to thank you and the President. The Secretary came to West Virginia. We had a small business roundtable. And the enthusiasm of our small business owners, I think, cannot be overstated, coming from a state that is 95% small business. But when asking them, what would you do if you actually got a tax cut? And what would you do with it as a small business owner? First one says, I'd raise the wages of everybody who works here because I can't do it now and I lose my best workers. I lose my best workers because I can't raise their wages to match what another company in town or across the road can give them. That is, I think, welcome relief to that worker and to that business owner. The next business owner said she's going to invest in more IT. She's in advertising. Invest in more IT, modernize, to bring more business into her small business so that she can hire the 4 people that she really needs to move forward. So that's more jobs. And then the growth aspect, I think, goes all throughout the wage earners in every aspect of this country. So I'm really pleased. I'm excited. This is our moment. We're going to go big and bold, and I think we're as united as I've seen us, and that to me is, I think, why I say that I think the aspirations to have this passed in the next several weeks are very much on target. Thank you.
Senator Dean Heller.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and it's great to spend time here with my colleagues talking about an issue that's important to the American people. My father was an auto mechanic, and my mother was a school cook, and they had 6 children. And they said to their 6 children, if you work hard and play by the rules, you'll succeed, and you'll live the American dream. Problem is, in society today, most Americans don't believe that anymore, and that's why we're here today, is to change that. And through the help of my colleagues, through the Secretary, Kellyanne, thank you, and the outside groups, your organizations for your help and support, we can make the American dream come true again. And that's the goal. Just got out of the Finance Committee, putting final touches on the Chairman's mark. It'll be introduced on Thursday. We'll go through amendments in committee all next week, starting Monday, until we're done. And I'm going to anticipate that we'll probably have 100 amendments from the other side, and we'll get a bill down to the floor and do what the President wants us to do. And that's what the Finance Committee is going to do, exactly what the President wants us to do, and that's to make America more competitive and also to make sure that the middle class has a tax cut. That's what the Finance Committee is going to do. That's what we're committed to, and I look forward to working with the committee and my colleagues in getting that done. Thank you.
Steve Daines.
Thank you, Senator Perdue. We're standing here on behalf of millions of American families who cannot afford a plane ticket, a bus ticket, or a train ticket to come here and fight on behalf of their paycheck and their families. In fact, 4 of the most prosperous counties in our nation are right here within the Beltway. You contrast that to Montana, that has some of the lowest per capita wages in the nation. This is about giving these families a pay raise through a tax cut. It's not a conservative idea or a liberal idea. It is common sense. And in fact, I'm going to quote for you a brief sentence here that's not Art Laffer, it's not President Reagan, it's not Jack Kemp, it's not even George Gilder. It was John F. Kennedy in December of 1962 in New York City, and President Kennedy said this: The purpose of cutting taxes now is not to incur a budget deficit, but to achieve the more prosperous, expanding economy which can bring a budget surplus. Those of us who have run businesses over the years know a growing business results in growing wages and a more prosperous nation.
Senator Mike Rounds.
Thank you. I don't think any of us can say it any better than what Steve just said. If we grow this economy, we can actually reduce our deficit. And that's what this is all about. We grow our economy, people get better wages. If we grow our economy, it means there's more revenue being produced with a lower tax rate. And that's what this is about. If we can actually bring in the revenue necessary to not only balance our budget, but to begin the process of reducing the deficit, that's what we're here for. That's what the American people want from us. I come from a family of 11. I'm the oldest of 11. And I remember way back, my mom and dad taught me one thing, and that was that at some point, you got to balance your budget. And mom and dad did that. The way that we do it in some cases is by simply reducing costs. But in other areas, it means you get a second job, which is what Dad did. In this particular case, we bring revenue in. We bring revenue in by growing this economy, and you do that by inviting businesses to once again be profitable, to come back into the United States from other countries that have been less challenging with regard to their tax policies and what our country has become. We have to learn from them. We've got to be competitive. The bottom line, if we want to reduce the deficit, we've got to grow the economy. That benefits the wage earners, and that most certainly means, at least for the next generation, less of a bill that we hand down to them.
Thanks, Mike. Senator Todd Young.
As a former member of the House Tax Writing Committee and now the U.S. Senator for Indiana, I have heard from countless Hoosiers about the importance of giving them tax relief. They essentially want three things. They want a tax code that is fair, they want a tax code that is simpler, and they want a tax code that allows them to keep more of their hard-earned money. Now, it's been 30 years, over 30 years, since we last had a significant tax rewrite in this country. And in the intervening period, the code has only grown more complex. It's only thwarted more ambitions. It's only killed more ideas. It's only crushed more dreams of rank-and-file Americans. This is our opportunity. This is an essential moment in time. We must get this done. And I think Republicans are united behind this effort. Now, this is personal to me, and it should be personal to every American. I'm the son of a small business owner. My brother now runs the business. And you know what they tell me? They tell me they spend countless hours on complying with the tax code. They are resentful of the fact that there are some large businesses that have the ability to scour into every detail of our overly complex code, to hire lobbyists here in Washington, D.C. They don't have that benefit. They want to go out there, they want to create more jobs, they want to serve their customers. They represent so many other small businesses around the state of Indiana and around this country. If we want to continue to grow jobs in this country, if we want those businesses, like my business, to compete for workers so that their wages rise, if we want rank-and-file Americans to be able to keep more of their hard-earned money, then we must act now. This is our opportunity. And our lodestar, our guiding light should be to make sure that every American can keep more of their hard-earned money. Let's get to work. Let's get this done.
Thank you. John Hogan.
Thank you, David. We're talking about empowering hardworking Americans. We're talking about empowering small business. I come from an ag state. There's 16 million people in this country that are either involved in farming and ranching or indirectly involved in farming and ranching. And that's the epitome of small business. You're talking family business when you're talking farming and ranching. And so when we look at this tax cut, it's not just about making sure that people keep more of their hard-earned dollars after tax, the hardworking American taxpayers, but it's really about empowering, energizing, and injecting capital into small business across this country. And small business is the backbone of our economy. And so as we work on this, we want to make sure that that's exactly what we're doing. We're making sure that they have more capital to invest in their farm, in their ranch, in their small business, in plant and equipment. Because then what do? They hire more people.
When they hire more people, there's a demand for labor. And when there's a demand for labor, what happens? Wages and income go up. So for every hardworking American out there, it's not just about keeping more of your money after tax. It's about raising wages and income in this great country.
Senator John Kennedy.
Thank you, David. This is what tax reform is about. This is all it's about. There are two groups of policymakers I have found in Washington. And I'm not talking about Democrats and Republicans. There are those who believe, as I do, and we do, in more freedom. And there are those who believe in more free stuff. This bill's about freedom. It's about allowing individuals and American businesses to keep more of the money they earn. I believe, and I think many of my colleagues here believe, that people and businesses can spend the money they earn better than government can. And that's all this legislation is about. For an individual, a mom and dad getting up every day, going to work, obeying law, paying their taxes, trying to do the right thing by their kids, it's about giving them more freedom by giving them more of their money and letting them keep more of their money. For our business women and our businessmen, it's about incenting them to take that extra money and invest in new plants and new machinery and new equipment and new software. Now, what is that going to do? It's going to create jobs, but for the current employees, it's going to make them more productive and cause wages to go up. I happen to believe, and I think history bears me out, that a country cannot tax, spend, and regulate itself into prosperity. And that's what we've been trying to do for the next decade. And it hasn't worked. People say, well, that's the way it's done in Washington. You don't understand. That's the way it's done around here. And my response to that is, well, the way we've been doing it sucks. Maybe we ought to try a different approach.
And with that, that concludes our prepared remarks. I think we'll take a few questions. Before we do, I just want to thank our outside supporters and all the work you guys have done. I want to thank Kellyanne for hanging around today and all the work you're doing. And Mr. Secretary, thank you for being gracious enough to stay around and handle all the questions today. So, but that will take some questions, sir.
You say that this tax bill, that this tax plan will affect everybody. So why isn't this more of a bipartisan issue?
I'll tackle that one first. Well, I think it is. We're working with both sides right now, trying to you heard there will be 100 amendments in committee. There'll probably be more than that on the floor. We're doing this in regular order. And so we fully expect to get some support in this tax bill. Look, why wouldn't they support this? This is pro-growth, pro-worker, and it's been proven to work. Thank you. Yes, sir.
In terms of the repeal of the individual mandate, there have been discussions with the White House where the President is in favor of that. But I haven't noticed that there are no moderate Republicans here, the people who sank the repeal of Obamacare and the repeal of the skinny repeal. Are you concerned, Senator Cruz, maybe answer this question, that might jeopardize this tax bill, an inclusion of the repeal of the individual mandate?
Well, look, there's going to be long and continued negotiations over the next couple of months. We've got a lot of work to do. We've got to achieve consensus. We haven't done that yet, but I believe we'll get there. One of the challenges of tax reform is if you're reducing rates, under the current approach in the House, they're paying for it by eliminating exemptions. That makes it in many ways more difficult to pass. One of the real virtues of repealing the individual mandate, number one, every Republican in the Senate has voted to repeal the individual mandate, 100% of us. But number two, $400 billion in revenue. If you're trying to make this work, makes it much easier to make it work, particularly if that money is directed to lowering individual rates. Listen, much of the pushback you're seeing to the House plan right now, the business side is terrific, but there are some taxpayers who are losing exemptions, particularly in some high-tax states, like New York or California, that could conceivably be paying higher taxes. I think that is a mistake. I think tax reform needs to cut taxes for everybody. And the beauty of repealing the individual mandate is, number one, you eliminate an IRS penalty that's falling on 6.5 million Americans who are predominantly middle and lower income. So it's immediate relief for those 6.5 million Americans, but it also allows you to lower rates for everyone so that people who are working hard, the result of a Republican majority in both houses needs to be that my tax bill for my family goes down so that I can save for my daughter's college tuition, so that I can save to take my family to Disney World. These are real challenges people are facing, and lowering people's tax bill, I think, is critical to making this happen.
And a quick follow-up to that, Kelly and Conway, I understand that the President spoke to Kevin Brady last night. Did he specifically mention that he wants to repeal the individual mandate?
Thank you for the question. We respect the fact that a process is ongoing, that it is the job of the legislature, both chambers, to go ahead and follow through with their work. The House has introduced its bill. The Senate will do the same, and there will be the process that occurs. The President has made very clear what his priorities are for both health care reform but also tax cuts and job security for the American people. I won't reveal any details of a private conversation, but I would go back to a previous question, if I may take a moment. The question as to whether tax cuts and tax overhaul will be bipartisan is really at this point a question for the Democrats, not the Republicans. And we want it to be bipartisan. We welcome their support. We don't know, frankly, how many of them are going to return home and tell the members of their districts or indeed their states that when they had an opportunity to give hardworking men and women across this country and aspiring and enduring entrepreneurs and job creators the tax relief that they deserve, that they expect, that they did not do so for petty partisan political reasons. And I would tell you, as a pollster of many decades, 28 years, that when you look at the polling, specifics really increases support. So if this is an argument about sound bites and clever wording, the other side will prevail. So what? Americans are smarter than that. They will look at the details. They will see that you're doubling the personal exemption, that you're increasing the number of Americans who will pay 0% in taxes, and you're increasing the number of Americans who will pay a larger percentage, 0% of a larger percentage of their income. You're giving not just child care tax credits, expanding them, which is a wonderful feature, but also adult dependents. And that, again, responds to the changing demography of our nation. You have many people in this country who are more and more responsible to help with the care of elder dependents. And so we would love to have Democratic support. And we know that people all across this country, regardless of whether they're represented by a Republican or a Democrat, are looking for much needed tax relief.
We have time for one more. In the back, young lady.
In your own conference here, it appears that there is a disagreement on the estate tax. Is this going to be ironed out any other way? Is the White House, Kellyanne, for repealing the estate tax, and how is this being worked out right now?
Yes, the President is interested in repealing the estate tax, but having said that, this will be one of the issues that we're working with the House and Senate. The number one priority, as we've said, is making businesses competitive, and the other number one priority is a middle-income tax cut. Those are the two most important things. So we look forward to working with the House and the Senate, and I am super excited. This is all about growth. I think, as you know, the President fundamentally believes we need to get back to sustained GDP of 3% or higher. This is about creating trillions of dollars of additional revenue for the government and close to $10 trillion into the economy. So this is about growth, and we look forward to working with the House and Senate and getting this to the President and being at a signing ceremony this year. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me do this.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, it's good.
There are a number of, I'm Ted Barrasso with CNN. There are a number of